Have you ever stopped to wonder what really happens to men who live alone without a woman by their side? For years, society has painted a very narrow picture of these men. A picture filled with assumptions about loneliness, decline, or struggle. People often imagine a man sitting in silence, disconnected from the world, slowly fading into isolation. But what if I told you that this image is only a fraction of the truth? The reality is far more layered, and in many cases far more surprising. Because while it's true that living alone in later life brings its share of challenges, there are also hidden strengths, overlooked freedoms, and profound lessons that quietly emerge from this path. Too often, we underestimate the resilience of older men who face life without a partner. But when we pull back the curtain, what we see is not just emptiness. We see growth, adaptation, and a kind of wisdom that can only be forged in solitude. In this video, I'm going to reveal 6 powerful truths about men who live this way. Truths that go beyond stereotypes and shine light on the real experience. The struggles, yes, but also the pride, independence, and unexpected joys. And I promise you this, by the time we reach the final truth, you'll see this topic in a completely new light. Maybe it will help you understand yourself better. Maybe it will give you a fresh perspective on a father, an uncle, or a friend who lives alone. Or maybe it will simply remind you that even in solitude, there is dignity, strength, and sometimes hidden beauty. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear may surprise you. Point 1 of the very first truths about older men who live alone is this: they learn to rely on themselves in ways they may never have imagined before. For many, especially those who grew up in a time when traditional roles meant that women often handled cooking, cleaning, and even the small details of daily life, the adjustment can feel overwhelming at first. Simple tasks, preparing meals, doing laundry, organizing bills, repairing something around the house, suddenly fall entirely on their shoulders. At the beginning, this can be frustrating, even discouraging. Imagine a man in his 70s staring at a pot of pasta, unsure if it's overcooked, or fumbling through a washing machine for the first time. These moments can sting because they highlight vulnerability. But here's the surprising part. With practice, these same tasks begin to transform. What once felt like obstacles become daily rituals. And those rituals quietly build strength. This self-reliance becomes more than survival. It turns into a source of pride. A man discovers that he can manage, he can sustain himself, he can stand on his own 2 feet. Psychologists call this autonomy, and research consistently shows that it is a key pillar of well-being in later life. The realization that I can take care of myself reshapes not just a man's confidence, but his entire identity. And here's something important. Self-reliance does not mean isolation. In fact, it often changes how men approach relationships. Instead of leaning on others out of necessity, they choose when and how to connect. Friendships, family ties, and community interactions become deliberate, intentional, and therefore more meaningful. So while outsiders may assume a man living alone is lonely, the reality is often the opposite. Many discover strengths they never knew they had. And that strength becomes the foundation of a new kind of independence. When a man lives alone, his home becomes something far deeper than just a roof over his head. It transforms into a mirror of his inner world. Unfiltered, uncompromised, and profoundly personal. Unlike a shared space where tastes must be balanced and compromises made, a home lived in alone tells the story of one man's journey. Every corner, every object, every quiet detail becomes a reflection of who he is, what he values, and the memories he chooses. And the memories he chooses to hold close. Some men choose simplicity, a tidy, practical space with only the essentials. Others allow their homes to overflow with collections. Books stacked high, shelves of old records, photographs of places visited long ago, or a workshop full of tools that speak to a lifetime of skill and creativity. A worn recliner in the corner might look ordinary to an outsider, but to him it represents comfort, routine, and belonging. A small kitchen table may not be set for two, but it still carries the warmth of meals enjoyed in solitude, meals he prepared with his own hands. Psychologists point out that our environments are powerful extensions of ourselves. The continuity theory of aging suggests that older adults maintain identity and stability through life choices, and one of the most visible choices is how they shape their living spaces. Studies even show that personal surroundings and objects carry deep emotional meaning. They anchor memory, preserve a sense of self, and provide comfort in times of change. For many older men, this freedom is healing. After decades of compromise, their home no longer has to impress guests or fit another person's preferences. It becomes sanctuary, not stage, a place where authenticity lives in every detail. And in that authenticity, there is peace. One of the most profound changes for men who live alone is the rhythm of daily life. With no partner to negotiate schedules, compromise routines, or debate how the day should unfold, life becomes entirely self-directed. They wake when their body tells them it's time, not when an alarm or someone else's needs dictate it. Breakfast can be at sunrise, or not until mid-morning. The day flows on personal terms, shaped by choice rather than obligation. This freedom might sound small, but it carries deep meaning. Psychologists say that control over one's own time is one of the most powerful contributors to mental health and well-being. Older men who live alone often rediscover what it means to listen to themselves, to rest when tired without guilt, to eat when hungry without keeping to someone else's schedule, to spend a Saturday tinkering in the garage or reading in the garden without explanation. But with freedom comes responsibility. When no one else is there to set the pace, accountability falls squarely on their shoulders. If the house becomes messy, if meals are skipped, or if days turn into idle drifting, there's no one else to blame. This balance, freedom on one side, responsibility on the other, can be both empowering and challenging. The activity theory of aging reminds us that maintaining routines and meaningful engagement is vital for happiness in later life. The men who thrive in solitude are often the ones who turn this freedom into structure, creating rhythms that nurture body, mind, and spirit. In the end, the rhythm of life shaped by choice is not about doing whatever you want. It's about designing days that feel authentic, days that reflect who you truly are. And that, in itself, is a powerful form of independence. It's important to be honest. Living alone in older age is not without its shadows. Behind the freedom and independence, there are risks that are often invisible to others, but very real to the men experiencing them. Research consistently shows that older men who live alone face higher rates of health decline, depression, and social isolation. Unlike women, who often maintain stronger networks of friendships, men are more likely to have relied heavily on their spouse for companionship and emotional support. When that support disappears, many struggle to rebuild it. Biomed Central reports that men also underreport feelings of loneliness, sometimes out of pride or stigma, even when those feelings quietly erode their mental health. The risks are not just emotional, they are physical too. Falls, medical emergencies, or accidents can become life-threatening when no one is nearby to notice or help. Columbia Doctors emphasizes that immediate response time often determines recovery, and men who live alone may not receive it in time. Even small issues like forgetting medication, skipping meals, or ignoring symptoms can snowball without a partner to intervene. And then there's the gradual shrinking of social ties. A phone call missed here, a lunch declined there, and before long, isolation becomes a heavy routine. KFF Health News and Taylor and Francis studies highlight that this loss of connection is strongly tied to increased risk of cognitive decline and even early mortality. Yet, these risks do not make solitude hopeless. Some men recognize them and take proactive steps, joining community groups, volunteering, calling friends, or adopting healthier routines. The truth is, living alone magnifies both strengths and vulnerabilities. It takes intention to turn solitude into strength, but without that effort, the hidden risks can slowly take over. If solitude carries risks, the antidote is not to rush into dependence. It is to practice something psychologists now call intentional connection. For older men living alone, friendships, social groups, and even brief conversations take on new weight. With no partner to automatically provide daily interaction, these men must learn to build relationships on purpose. First, this can feel unnatural. Many men have spent years prioritizing career, family, or practical responsibilities, often leaving social maintenance to their spouses. KFF Health News reports that without deliberate effort, these connections fade, leaving men vulnerable to isolation. But when they choose to make connection a priority, the results can be transformative. Phone calls to old friends, weekly lunches, joining a local hobby club, or volunteering at a community center. These aren't small gestures. They are lifelines. They create accountability, laughter, belonging, and the steady rhythm of being part of something larger than oneself. Programs like Men's Sheds, popular in countries like Australia, Ireland, and the UK, exist for this very reason. These are community workshops where older men gather to share tools, skills, and conversation. A simple woodworking bench becomes a safe space for friendship, emotional release, and camaraderie. Wikipedia notes that these initiatives are built on one powerful truth. Social fitness is as essential as physical fitness for healthy aging. The activity theory of aging supports this idea. It suggests that older adults who stay socially engaged and maintain roles in their communities report higher levels of satisfaction and well-being. In other words, being socially active isn't optional. It's protective. For the man living alone, connection is not about replacing what was lost, but about shaping new bonds. It's about proving that even in solitude, life can remain deeply social, purposeful, and alive. So there you have it. 6 powerful truths about older men who live alone without a woman by their side. These truths aren't simple, and they aren't one-dimensional. They hold both the strengths and the struggles, the freedoms and the vulnerabilities, the quiet victories and the silent battles. Together, they paint a fuller picture of what this path really looks like, not through stereotypes but through lived experience. Maybe as you listened, you thought of someone in your life, a father, an uncle, a brother, a neighbor. Or maybe you saw yourself reflected in one of these truths. If so, I hope this video gave you something more than just information. I hope it gave you deeper understanding, more compassion, and perhaps even a sense of dignity for those who walk this road every day. Because in the end, living alone is not the same as being lonely. It can be a story of resilience, of carving out independence, of redefining what it means to age with strength and wisdom. But it also reminds us of the responsibility we carry, to reach out, to connect, to notice the ones who may be carrying their solitude quietly. If you found value in these insights, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Type truth number 4 so I know you watched all the way through. Share this video with someone who might benefit from seeing it. You never know whose perspective it might shift. And if you haven't already, Hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you won't miss future videos just like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. Here's the final truth, and perhaps the most surprising one. With time, many older men who live alone begin to experience a shift, a quiet transformation. What once felt like emptiness or adjustment gradually becomes a space for wisdom, acceptance, and even rediscovery. At first, solitude can seem harsh. Long silences, empty rooms, the absence of someone to share daily moments with. But as weeks turn into years, something changes. The silence begins to teach. Many men learn resilience in ways they never thought possible. They grow more comfortable sitting with discomfort, more appreciative of small pleasures. A warm cup of coffee, the sound of rain on the window, a favorite book revisited. This slowing of pace creates space for something else. Self-discovery. Men who once defined themselves by work, family duties, or shared identities sometimes uncover long-buried parts of themselves. For some, it's creative expression, painting, writing, music. For others, it's spiritual depth or philosophical reflection. Solitude opens a doorway into parts of the self that were often left unexplored in busier years. It's important to be clear. This isn't about romanticizing loneliness. Loneliness is real and painful, and it must be acknowledged. But what we're seeing here is a different thread of the story, that even in solitude there can be growth. There can be a reframing of later life, not as decline, but as rediscovery of what is essential. Here's the final truth, and perhaps the most surprising one. With time, many older men who live alone begin to experience a shift, a quiet transformation. What once felt like emptiness or adjustment gradually becomes a space for wisdom, acceptance, and even rediscovery. At first, solitude can seem harsh. Long silences, empty rooms, the absence of someone to share daily moments with. But as weeks turn into years, something changes. The silence begins to teach. Many men learn resilience in ways they never thought possible. That's right. Loneliness can be as harmful to your health as smoking or obesity. Why? Because human connection is not just a luxury. It's a lifeline. Without someone to check in, to notice changes in mood, or even to remind you to take your medication, small struggles can quietly grow into bigger ones. And here's something people rarely admit. Even when you try to stay busy watching TV, knitting, gardening, reading, there is an ache for deeper connection. A phone call may brighten the day for a while, but it doesn't replace the warmth of someone physically there. Loneliness is one of the hardest truths of living alone after 80, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. Experts recommend building small rituals of connection, things that may seem small, but can make a world of difference. Call a neighbor even just for a few minutes of chat. Join a community activity, a church group, or a senior center where faces become familiar. Reach out daily, even if it's just sending a message, waving to a passerby, or having a brief conversation at the grocery store. Because connection isn't always about big moments. It's about daily touches that remind you. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You still matter. Loneliness is real. But naming it, facing it honestly, and seeking out small sparks of human contact can lighten that heavy weight and bring meaning back to the quietest of days. Truth number 2. The challenge of daily chores and mobility. When you live alone after 80, it's not the big things that surprise you. It's the small, ordinary tasks. The things you once did without thinking. The things that once took minutes now feel like mountains. Carrying groceries from the car. Dragging the vacuum across the living room. changing the sheets on the bed. Even something as simple as bending down to pick up laundry or reaching to dust a shelf suddenly demands energy, balance, and focus in ways you never noticed before. Take Irene, age 85. She's always been proud of keeping a spotless home. In her younger years, Saturday mornings meant opening the windows, turning on music, and cleaning from top to bottom. But now, just carrying a basket of laundry down the stairs feels risky. Changing her sheets leaves her winded. Sweeping the kitchen floor can take twice as long as it used to, and it leaves her back aching. The frustration is real. You want to stay independent. You want to keep your home the way you always have. But your body doesn't cooperate the way it once did. And that gap between what you remember being able to do and what you can do today is painful. There's another layer to risk. Every chore carries hidden dangers. Carrying heavy grocery bags strains your shoulders. Bending down too quickly can make you dizzy. Standing on a stool to reach the top shelf could mean a fall. And when you live alone, a simple fall isn't just inconvenient. It can be life-changing. That fear creeps in quietly. Sometimes it shows up as hesitation before you start a task. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to leave the vacuum in the closet a little longer, or to let the dust gather because you're too tired to fight with it today. And sometimes it's embarrassment. Not wanting to admit to children or neighbors that you can't quite keep up the way you used to. But here's what experts say. Struggling with chores is not a failure. It's a signal, a reminder that your body has limits, and that pushing beyond them without support can lead to bigger problems. Physical strain, fatigue, or even a small misstep can undo months of health and independence. The good news? There are ways to make these mountains smaller. Break large tasks into smaller steps. Instead of cleaning the whole kitchen at once, just wipe the counters today and mop the floor tomorrow. Use aids like lightweight vacuum cleaners, rolling laundry baskets, or grabbers to avoid bending.